Okay, so here, matplot library is, I think you all are familiar about it because you always use this package to plot graphs. And here I'm going to tell you some of the basic things in matplotlib. For example, the coding styles. I think some of you may have noticed that there are some different coding styles within this library. For example, you can use a plt dot. Okay, so first of all, you need to import something like this, right? And then as a PLT. So you basically use this thing. This is basically an acronym of this package. So you call this thing, and then you just call this package. So for example, in here you can use the plt dot function to create a figure and then plot and then add title to it. But there is another style of coding, which is called the object-oriented coding style. And first of all, in this coding style, first of all, you need to create objects from the functions. So this is the function that I call, which is a subplots function. It actually returns a figure and the axis objects. So after you call this function, you assign the figure and axis objects to these variables, and then you do more coding and plotting using these objects. So for example, I add the plots to the axis object. So I need to type ax.plots and then the xy elements and then I use the set title to add the title to the plot. So they are basically the same thing, but the coding styles are different. Yeah. So here, let's go to some of the really basic things in matplotlib. So in matplotlib, the most basic element is a figure. You need a figure to create a plot. So here this is a function to generate a figure, and I just store it in a figure fig variable. Yeah. So a figure is basically an object that does not have any things on it if you didn't specify anything within this figure yet. So you can see in this figure, it only has an object. It only has a statement. It doesn't even have some axis. And if you want to create an axis like this, you need to add an axis object to this. So here, this is the axis object. And you can finally plot things on this after you add the axis object. So these are the basic elements in matplotlib that you need to take care about. Yeah. And then there are some more functions in matplotlib library that helps you to customize your plot. For example, here we have a figure, right? And then in this example, you only have one axis in this figure, but actually you can add more than one axis to the figure to generate the subplots. Okay, so for example, here is like axis 1 and 2, and it basically means I have two axes in this subplot. And how I define the positions of the subplot is from these parameters. For example, here it is 1, 2, 1, and if you check the documentation of the function, it means it defines the number of rows, the number of columns that the figure has, and then you index each axis to make it a separate, to define which position that this subplot locates. So here I have one row because I have n row equals to 1 and then 2 columns. So I basically have a 1 row by 2 column figures. And then, so it generates a figure like this which have two axis objects within this figure. And oh, this is basically another function to generate the same feature. So let's move on. And then after you create the axis object, you can plot data on this axis object using different kinds of functions. So for example, here I first generate the axis and figure objects, and then I do some post-process. It's not processing, it's just assigning the data from this data set to here. So if you run this code alone, you can see I assign these values to this variable. So I assign a longitude variable and a latitude variable. And then here I applied the mean function to this data array. So if you recall this, it is how I call data array from this DS data set, right? So I can apply the mean function to it so that I can maybe, okay, I want a time averaged temperature. So it will becomes, yeah, the time dimension would disappear because it has a latitude and longitude, and because the time dimension is averaged, so yeah, it becomes like this. So here I want to take an average in both the time dimension and longitude dimension. So here I apply this function and store the final output to this variable. And then I plot it using this function. So this function is a function to generate a line plot. And then you need to specify the x-axis, and this is the y-axis to this function. So I generate a plot like this. Okay. Yeah, so, and if you are creating multiple axes within a figure, then you need to do something like this. So you create a figure with two axis objects using the subplot function. And then you need to specify which axis you want to add the plot to. So for example, I want to add the line plots to axis 1. And then you need to specify like AX1 because it is the axis 1 object. So then you can generate the plots to this one particular axis, but not the other one. Okay, here actually is an exercise for you. So here I have two data arrays, which I have selected the coordinates from. I selected the coordinates like surrounding Hong Kong within, yeah, this is like the coordinates around Hong Kong, and I selected data within this range of data, yeah, and assign it to data variable. So I want you to use the dot scatter function to make a scatter plot out of these two variables to see if they have any relationship. Yeah, maybe we can do it together because we don't really, yeah. So basically, you first need to create an figure object and also the axis object. So this is the basic things to do in matplotlib to plot objects, and then you add the scatter function to the axis object, and then just type these. It will become something like this. Okay, so this is the x-axis that you want to define, and this is the y-axis. Okay. And then after generating these plots, you may want to add some more attributes so that your plots are more colorful or more visual or easy to visualize is not something just like this thing. So for example, you can add like titles, labels, legend, text, so etc. etc. And here I have a basic line plot like this one. And here I have add so many customization attributes. For example, I add a super title with by adding a function, by calling this function to this figure object. And I can specify the font size and font weight, etc. And I adjust the position of this title as well. And then I add a bunch of attributes like colors, line width, styles, and labels of the plot, of the line plot. And here I set a bunch of titles and labels. And these are the functions that help you to customize your plot and generate better images. So